I was very surprised when I measured the drivers on both sides of these Kiwi Ears ARDOR headphones, so let's check them out. Hi everybody, I'm Todd and I hope you're having a great day. No, I don't have the ear cups reversed on these headphones. They actually have three-way connectivity, so you get the analog port on the right side, a USB-C port on the left side, and they also have Bluetooth connectivity. Now these headphones are targeted at entry level for audiophiles, but they could be useful as an all-arounder if you're thinking for studio use, gaming, really anything in between. So I'm going to do my usual audio tests on them. We'll go through the graphs and we'll take a look at how they perform. Now looking at the sine sweep analysis, we can see there are some peaks and valleys along the way. These headphones are not intended to be a flat headphone. They do have a sound signature to them. And of course, the linear analysis gives us some extra detail in the upper frequencies. And now I'll go ahead and overlay the manufacturer frequency response graph versus the raw measurements that I took. And you can see that generally my raw measurements do follow their frequency profile that's stated. There's a little bit of sharper transients in mine than what they're showing, but overall, it's very similar. And the interesting thing though here is that the two drivers are very closely matched. And that is something I do not often see in a headphone in this price range. And right away, that was something that stood out. And as you may know, when I do the raw frequency analysis, I do 15 passes on each ear and I readjust the headphones each time. And that way, I get an idea of how much variance there is based on positioning. And overall, like I say, it's a lot of consistency with these headphones. So that was something that was really good to see. Now listening back through the headphones, I hope over YouTube you could hear the enhanced sub-bass frequencies from these headphones. They absolutely deliver in that end. So if you need something that's going to represent those frequencies in music, these headphones do a good job there. There is some underrepresentation in the bass and mid-bass frequencies, which tends to also make that appear to be more than it is though. Then in the upper frequencies, there's a little bit of an overemphasis around 4K and a couple of peaks and valleys along the way here. These headphones do have a coloration to them. They're not entirely flat, but I find them generally pleasing to listen to over long periods, and there's nothing harsh in the upper frequencies. Linear analysis gives us some additional detail. And looking at the direct overlay analysis, we can see those enhanced lower frequencies, and then in the upper frequencies, we definitely have a few that are underrepresented. Moving to the linear analysis, it actually appears that a lot of the upper frequencies above 10K certainly underrepresented here. Now that doesn't grossly change the character of the headphone tone, but it does remove some of the extension from the sound. It was a little bit surprising to me based on this having a coaxial driver design with a dedicated high frequency driver in each ear cup. But overall, the sound here is quite balanced. There's nothing obviously shrill here. And once again, I hope that translated well over YouTube. Now, I found the sound profile of these headphones to be very consistent across the three input options, analog, USB, and Bluetooth. And so I set up a live demonstration here with a purple region being the original file, the original sound profile, and the white line being the dynamic, what you're listening to. And so I'll cycle between analog, Bluetooth, and USB, and also I'll bring the active noise canceling in and out because I also found that very transparent on these headphones.
scattered across the dusty floor in the backseat of my Chevy 58, along with bits of candy wrappers. Looking back to when our castle was a shack, vacation was making figure eights in the parking lot. Remember when we used to forgive more than we forgot? Polaroids all scattered across the dusty floor in the backseat of my Chevy 58, along with bits of candy wrappers. Looking back to when our castle was a shack, vacation was making figure eights in the parking lot. Remember when we used to forgive more than we forgot?
If I wrote you a song, if I got every word perfectly weighted on a thin piece of paper, would it make any difference? Would it change for the better? If I wrote you a poem, if I posted a letter, if I wrote you a song, if I got every word perfectly weighted on a thin piece of paper, would it make any difference? Would it change for the better? If I wrote you a poem, if I posted a letter.
Now, when I listen to male vocal in these headphones, I can feel a bit of a thickness in the lower end that these headphones, their signature is imparting. There's also a few reductions in some of the upper frequencies that has a little impact on clarity, but not severe here. And again, if you're a person that wants to wear these for long hours and you're sensitive to high frequencies, these actually could be a really good choice for you. Moving over to the female vocal, it's less impacted in the low end, but certainly we also have some of those upper frequencies that aren't here. Now, again, if you're sensitive to sibilants, this is going to be a good thing for you, but it's just something to be aware if you wanted to use them for critical listening decisions. As an all-arounder and for general music, again, I found them quite pleasant to listen to. And this is a sample of spoken words, so we can compare the sound of the recording directly versus the sound through the headphones. And this is a sample of spoken words, so we can compare the sound of the recording directly versus the sound through the headphones. Now, I found these headphones generally pleasant to listen to for spoken word. Now, depending on the speaker, you'll have more or less of a thickening effect in the low frequencies that does show through. But in terms of the upper frequencies, they also tend to reduce the sibilance. I found that there was clarity, but not anything excessive in those upper frequencies. So they were quite comfortable for that. I would recommend them if you want something and you listen to a lot of podcasts or audiobooks. Now, in keeping with the idea that these headphones would be for multi-use, let's listen to some game audio. After spending some time gaming on these headphones, I'll say they provide an energetic experience. The low-end performance really makes you feel the environment, but there's enough detail in the top end for you to hear the subtleties, like rustling leaves and footsteps. So I thought they performed very well that way. The environment is not overly expansive. They are a closed-back design, but I'm going to say they perform at least average to above average for a closed-back headphone. So for gaming, if that's one of the use cases you're looking for, these are a good option. Now, I'd say soundstage performance on these headphones is above average for a closed-back design. They're not going to compete with really premium open-back models on that front, but overall, if you need a closed-back solution and soundstage is somewhat important to you, I think these would be a good choice there. Stereo imaging, much the same thing. I'm not going to say, it's a full 3D image, but it certainly pushes things a little bit better than if it was just sounding like it was two ears completely separate and that's all I had. So overall Soundstage and Imaging performance, I'm going to say, is slightly above average for a closed back design. Taking a look at the build quality of these headphones, I have to say that they feel actually pretty good for the price range. You do have quite a bit of swivel and adjustment here. They also fold up if you want to do that, but they come with a really nice hard case, and so that might be a better option for transporting them if you have the room. Now they come with two cables. You get a 3.5 to 3.5 millimeter for analog. It's pretty short, about 4 feet. You get a USB-C to USB-C, but you can also adapt to an A if you need to do that. This can be for both charging and audio. You get an instruction manual as well. Pretty positive lock on the side. They'll hold in place when you set them where you want them. They've got pleather ear pads. They're quite soft and comfortable. Then in terms of the connections, you've got the 3.5 millimeter on the right ear cup. You got the USB on the left ear cup. Controls here for the power and Bluetooth. You hold it to power it on. Gives you an audio response. You get volume control here as well that you can move back and forth. And on the other side, you got active noise canceling, and these headphones do have noise canceling built in as well as a transparent mode, and I found it quite effective. It really does attenuate the sound quite well. So comfortable overall, build quality is good here in this price point. I won't read off all the features and specifications to you, but a couple of key points here is that they're a 32 ohm headphone, they're easy to drive, and they'll get plenty loud regardless of your connectivity. So analog, USB, or Bluetooth, you're going to get plenty of volume out of them. Now, in terms of the coaxial drivers, that's something that's a little bit unique in this price range. You get a bass mid driver and a treble driver in each ear cup. Now that I spent some time with these headphones, I'll give you my final thoughts, and I'll start with sound. First of all, for general listening, podcast, music, that type of thing, they have a pleasant sound signature. They're not overly brittle or harsh in the top end, so they're not going to be fatiguing to listen to. They do have a fairly powerful bass response. It's not as excessive as some other headphones, but it's absolutely there. If you want headphones that are going to push the mid-range out for you, not so much. There's going to be other choices. But for just a pleasing overall listening experience, they get the job done there. For gaming, absolutely a nice powerful sound from them. Feels like you're part of the environment. Again, for a closed-back headphone, they're fairly immersive, and so I like that. If you want them for studio use, again, the mids don't push forward, so they're going to be a little more challenging to use for that application versus some other headphones that are maybe a little tailored towards mixing and mastering, but they can get the job done as an all-rounder. For connectivity, I really like that you get analog, USB, and Bluetooth. If I'm thinking about, an all-arounder, it's got to connect to everything, and these do get the job done there as well. And if you're looking for other headphone ideas, check out one of the videos on the screen. I appreciate having you here today, and I'll see you next time.